Welcome to the new volume of Shadowscast, which is very likely to be even less frequent than the original volume, and if I have anything to say about it, the episodes will be shorter. The 30-minute episodes will be rare, probably. For gaming updates, um, this segment will have a short section on the North Korea-South Korea thing, and some sections on cherry blossoms by request. We'll also talk a little bit about apps and things and touch on some news. And let's start there. In gaming news, I'm getting much closer to initiating the RuneQuest campaign that I've been talking about. Just a few more things to take care of there, such as actually recruiting players. And my long-running MechWarrior, A Time of War campaign is going on hiatus again. and this time I'm not sure how long it'll be on hiatus for. Hopefully it'll start up again soon. But in the interim, I have decided to do something that I've been wanting to do for ages, and that's run a Pendragon campaign. I'll be using the 5.1 edition of the rules, and with some of my older supplements, of course, and running the game with players this time who don't know each other. And we'll see what happens. I'll be running it as a play-by-email or PBEM using Google Plus, not Hangouts, but Google Plus as in text. And I'll keep you in the loop as to how that's going. Okay, on to the first segment. I backed a Kickstarter not long ago, which has now come to completion, which was called Magicians, or Magicians the Language Learning RPG. And what this is a supernatural game set in modern Korea, where characters are essentially students in Magic Academy. Now, Magicians, more than anything else, contributes to the player's ability to learn the Korean language. And how it does this is by having the magical effects learned in the game use Korean as the base language. So, to make a Harry Potter reference, like they use Latin, players would use Korean. Now, Magicians is a handy-sized tome, quite thick, very heavy, well made. And it's also available on PDF. Print copies are going to be delayed for non-backers for a while due to, the current economy and rising postal rates and that sort of thing. But the PDF is available. You can get it in the usual sources. And this is a PDF which allows you to not only learn to read and understand the Korean used in the game, but also hear it. And other online support will be available over time. So, including speech recognition technology, this is actually, surprisingly, a quite effective way to pick up some things to say while engaging in enjoyable roleplay. So keep an eye out for it. Part of the stretch goals extension of the original Kickstarter campaign was to create hacks for Japanese and Chinese. Japanese, I believe, will be like Magicians is, in that it will enable you to study and develop skill speaking Japanese, where I believe the Chinese version is a writing pack. But check it out. The author is Kyle Simons. He's a resident of Seoul, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next. I was quite pleased to discover that one of the movers and shakers behind Exile Games, the creators of Ubiquity, which, as you all know, I truly, truly love, has decided to put out their own game. So under Siege Tower Games, we will be getting next year a 50s sci-fi game called Menace from Beyond. And with this game, you're intended to be able to do giant ants, Godzilla, Martian invaders, the communist threat, all of that stuff, using the speed and power of Ubiquity. So that's kind of exciting. And the reason why I bring this up is that there is an ongoing playtest which has just started this April, and anyone can be involved. And if you are involved and offer useful feedback, you may get your name in the credits. So it's something to consider. Go to siegetowergames.com, and if you're at all interested in the atomic age, this might be the game for you to explore. Chaosium has recently released the Atomic Age for Call of Cthulhu, and in the past there haven't been too many games that touched on this era, so it's not exactly unmined territory. There's 45's Psychobilly Retropocalypse, and there's, I mean, from a certain point of view, there's Eldritch Skies, and others I'm sure I'm forgetting, but this is an area rich for mining. So something to consider. Menace from Beyond. In other Ubiquity news, Perils of the Surface World will be released soon, and I was one of the Kickstarter backers for that, so I'll be looking forward to getting my copy in the mail. Nice hardcover tome of fast-paced Ubiquity Hollow Earth Expedition adventures. And after that's all wrapped up, we've now heard that a Kickstarter will be begun, finally, for Revelations of Mars. Now, this is a project that we've been hearing about for a long time, and it'll be great to see it move forward into the last stage of its development. So keep an eye out for that, and all the excitement that that will bring.
Well, the cherry blossoms are out, and spring weather has definitely arrived. From here on out, it's a gradual increase of temperature until we all start wishing it's winter. Blossoms, blossoms everywhere. They won't last too much longer. They've been out for about a week. The magnolia blossoms have come and gone, and I'm out here in the backyard looking at some under the light of the moon, because I'm not really a flower guy, but this is a big part of, well, Northeast Asian culture. It's a big part of Korean culture, mostly since the Japanese occupation. But every spring, all over the country, there are streets that are devoted entirely to cherry blossoms, and you'll find couples wandering underneath them hand in hand as the cherry blossoms flutter down in the soft spring breezes. And although right now it's quite a windy day and I'm literally freezing because it's not spring temperatures, I give this little look at spring perfection to you.
If you're not familiar with RPG Stack Exchange, and you are very interested in role-playing games and have a broad experience with many different games, you might want to check it out. RPG Stack Exchange is a question and answers site. It's not a forum. And what it's for is people with questions about role-playing games can go and post them. And people with knowledge of that game can post the answer. And the answers are voted up based on accuracy and completeness. And anyone is able to edit those answers to improve them. And there's a process for all of that. And it's a reputation-based community. In a nutshell, that's what RPG Stack Exchange is. It's an incredible wealth of knowledge. You have, early employees of TSR working there down to people who just started role-playing yesterday. So we have a broad range of questions from a varying range of ages and experience levels, and everybody there to help everybody else out learn more and more about how a particular rule works, or the history of gaming, or game master techniques, or player tips, and the like. So I've enjoyed participating in this since the last stage of its beta, and this week, it's April 11th as I record this, this week a question was asked about the original West End game Star Wars game, actually the second edition. And the question was, what were some recommendations or ways to keep lightsabers out of the hands of non-force sensitives in the game? And the whole question was posed under the idea that starting templates such as the Outlaw, which are, designed around the concept of physical violence, that this person would be more effective using a lightsaber fresh out of the box than the Jedi character. And, well, there's a certain truth to this. But with my interest in genre as a defining element of the games we play, I started thinking quite deeply about this question. And while my own answer on RPG Stack Exchange focuses on other things, I thought it would be interesting, or at least I thought I would enjoy, talking a little bit about genre in this case, here, in this new installment of the second volume of the Shadowscast. So the first thing that came to my mind was that we played Star Wars a lot. We had a variety of templates. We only ever had one Jedi, and this was never an issue. Out of all the players that we played with, and it was like 10 or 12 people that were involved in the game over the course of our run with it, nobody who wasn't the one guy who played the Jedi ever decided that they would use a lightsaber. And the reason for that had nothing to do with the rulebook saying that they weren't available. It had everything to do with the fact that in the films, it's a Jedi weapon. Even though Han picks one up and uses it in The Empire Strikes Back to cut open the Tauntaun and keep from freezing to death, he wasn't using a lightsaber. You know what I mean? And the only thing that was really keeping us from using such a cool weapon was genre. It's not appropriate. And I wonder in how many other games this happens. I also wonder, what about genre conventions which are okay if it's a physical object like a lightsaber, and non-Jedi don't use that weapon because it doesn't fit the game. Something like that. Some kind of statement like that. But in other aspects, say you're playing a Musketeers game set in 17th century France, and someone says, well, there were no female musketeers, so you'll have to play a male or not be a musketeer because it doesn't fit the genre. It's kind of interesting how some genre elements are okay to bend and others aren't. Well, of course, lightsabers have no feelings to be hurt, and lightsabers aren't in the game, and lightsabers aren't playing the game, so it doesn't really matter what kind of restrictions we place on them, whereas people are playing the game, and people do have feelings to be hurt, and people do want to be able to try to not be bound by historical short-sightedness and just have fun playing a game. So why can't you have a female knight or a female musketeer or what have you? Genre is what we make of it. Sitting around the table, we decide exactly how the genre will be expressed. How transferable is this concept, though? And I remember that a lot of the conflicts that I was involved with as a young gamer, traveling from group to group or table to table, trying to get a game to play in, a lot of the conflicts that I remember were based around these conventions, these assumptions of genre from one table not matching those from the next. House rules that individual groups had taken on or had developed to further cement the style of play, the mood of play, the genre of play that they liked, did not gel with that of another group. And if it were perceived that your table was an easier venue in which to play, then you were cheating, or you didn't have as much game as this other group. You know, so actually playing the game, by the book was kind of a holy grail in a way, if you were able to actually make the game work that way. Of course, we're talking about early Dungeons and Dragons at the time. So all of these things brought to my mind by a lightsaber, and I'm very curious to hear what you might think about some of these ideas. How does genre transfer? How does the way that you play Call of Cthulhu match the way other groups that you've seen or encountered play Call of Cthulhu? Do you have a division between the group and the characters so that there's a lot of laughter during your Cthulhu session, but yet at the same time you're imagining cosmic horror? Or are you sitting in the dark with candles, really trying to generate actual fear in the players, a fear response in the players, where they are really in tune with or having a great deal of empathy for the situation that their characters are in, to the point where there's no levity around the table? How transferable are the concepts from your Dungeons and Dragons games, or from your Pathfinder games, or from your Spycraft games? How do your spies from those games match up with guys playing James Bond 007 or Top Secret? If you've got something to say on this, please answer in the comments or send me a video response. I would really like to hear what you have to say. The main reason I bring this up, however, is not my interest in genre. It's the reactions of some of the other respondents. Now, at first, when this question was asked, it seemed like the person asking the question was the game master. And they were asking us ways in which they could prevent players from getting their hands on lightsabers, which of course you can already tell might generate a little bias in a certain type of player who's extremely interested in player agency. So one of the early comments on the question was that a better place to start would be in analyzing how the game master was trying to prevent the fun of the players at the table, taking it to mean that the question was saying, if the players play this way, I'm not having any fun, how can I stop it? And they wanted to reflect that back and say, well, look, you're preventing the players from having a good time. Now, it turns out that the person who asked the question was not a game master. The person in question was a player in a Star Wars game whose Jedi character he felt was completely outclassed by a non-Jedi character. And the only person at the table who cared was him. And he was curious if that's how the game works, and isn't that a little weird? And it was that kind of question. Now, if you haven't played Star Wars, you might not be aware that in the original editions of the game, the Jedi started out very weak and really had a slow build to power, which not everybody had the patience for. Whereas some of the other templates could really focus the XP that they earned into a limited number of areas and get a very reliable, very high skill. And, you know, kind of take some pride or whatever in having that to be known for, like a high blaster skill, or being excellent pilots or navigators or con artists or the like. whereas the Jedi had to split all of their XP across multiple Force skills, in which they had to combine to use in order to get anything done. And there are all kinds of discussions about if this is balanced or broken or whatnot, and that's for another day. But the reaction of coming down on this person for wanting to limit an aspect of their game, I thought interesting, either as a game master or as a player. Take, for example, a game like Rifts, which is not a game I've played, but I think more people have played it than Palladium Fantasy, which I played a lot, which has a similar issue. They are very, very huge games in terms of player character options. One of the strengths of the Palladium system is that any sentient race really is playable as a PC. From your typical human all the way up to dragons and the like. So this flexibility has always been present in the game, and it has always been a problem for game masters and players who can't say no. And being in a situation where you have so many broad character choices, eventually you're going to meet the player who wants to come in and play something that, compared to the campaign you have in mind, is ridiculous or inappropriate. And this is not too far a stretch from the idea of non-Jedi running around with lightsabers, kicking the crap out of Jedi with lightsabers simply because of a dice disparity. And while it's entirely possible in terms of mechanics, and is maybe not even that much of a stretch of things if we consider a very competent physical character from the Star Wars universe meeting Luke as a young boy on Tatooine, and both of them being given lightsabers from their fathers. Who's going to win? I mean, it's, of course, all of that is probable. It comes back down to genre, and it comes back down to being willing to do the things that will cause the genre you and your group want to manifest at the table. And this is a social aspect of campaign design, which not everybody is comfortable with. And it's interesting to me how trendy it is to be pushing all of the freedom to say yay or nay into the player's hands, rather than towards some kind of balance between the game master and the players, or some kind of group aspect where all players need to be satisfied. I find it really interesting how these concepts, when they become codified and shared in groups, tend to go this way.
This is tteokbokki, which is rice cakes and fish meal and instant noodles and spicy sauce served very hot with hard-boiled eggs. Ta-da! Hard-boiled egg. And this is something that you would buy in the street or make at home for a nice Sunday afternoon treat. It has been a long time since we talked about Android apps, and that is an oversight I should have corrected a long time ago. So, let's get into it. The last time, although we looked at dice rollers and some other things, what I really want to focus on is PDF readers. Now, in the last one, I came out and said that Easy PDF Reader was by far the best. It was the fastest and most stable, and definitely the one I would choose to use. Although, for a couple of PDFs, I was torn between Easy PDF and the Kindle Reader. Well, there has been a back and forth struggle where Adobe, which I had at the bottom of my list, not only rose to be comparable, but actually, in the end, has superseded both. Easy PDF Reader has an awful lot of features, all of them customizable, which make it very attractive. And I do tend to use it as much as I use Adobe Reader, but I have found that generally speaking, except for a few PDFs, I use Adobe Reader the most now because of stability and speed, and because it now has more features in terms of things that I actually use than the others. So, Easy PDF Reader, one of its huge strengths is annotation, and it has a wide variety of ways to do that, but it lacks hyperlinks. Whereas Adobe Reader not only has the table of contents or the bookmarks, which makes it very easy to navigate your PDF quickly, it also allows for hyperlinked text, and I'll show you an example of that. Okay, so RuneQuest 6th edition is one where there are hyperlinks in the text. Now, you'll have to forgive me, I'll actually have to find a hyperlink, as there isn't one on that page, which I thought there would be. Okay, here's one. So I'll angle the page so you can see the blue text. Okay, now that's a hyperlink in the text, and we can just hit it and very quickly blast to page 152. The other way to navigate in Adobe Reader, which I'll admit I find a little annoying, is to tap the lower portion of the screen, which will then bring up a menu bar across the bottom with a little bookmark icon. Now, I don't find it works very well with the RuneQuest PDF, but as this was an easy one to find with the hyperlink, here we go. So let's see how it works. Tapping the lower portion of the screen, up comes the bar, there's the bookmark tab, and then these are all the bookmarks. So you can just tap the title, or you can tap the black arrow next to it to get an expanded title. Right. And the page loads, and it loads in pieces. And here's another bookmark to an external website, which is also kind of handy. So this is a strength of Adobe Reader. So we'll back out of here and wait. Not all PDFs are that slow, but that one definitely is. So to give you another comparison, let's take a look at Battletech, the A Time of War Companion. Okay, now this is a very, very heavy piece of text with lots of background charts and graphics and whatnot. And this is about normal loading speed for this one. And you can see it's reacting much better and more stably to this PDF than it did to the RuneQuest PDF. And what's the difference? Only they know. So again, just to show the bookmarks, you tap the lower portion of the screen, it pops up, and so we have a main title, hit the black triangle, you get the expanded list of contents, it's hard to see there, and then let's say advanced character creation, and we can go there, and easy enough. Now, the same experience in Easy PDF Reader will probably look a little more stable. Now, not all PDFs display with their covers. Like here you can see the Prime Adventures, Prime Adventures 1, the cover comes up, Ars Magica 5th edition, cover comes up, this RuneQuest add-on, and John Wick, and whatnot. But then other games are just not ready for thumbnails. Okay, so let's look at RuneQuest 6th edition. Now we can either choose it off of our title menu, or we can use this list of folders. So if I go into my BRP folder and pull up my RuneQuest 6 folder and then go to RuneQuest 6th edition, if I feel like doing it that way. There we go, and it remembers where I was reading last, as Adobe Reader does. But it does not display the hyperlink text. Okay. However, I suspect that some of the reasons why, both in Adobe and in this, that RuneQuest core book is sometimes a little unstable are those hyperlinks, but that's just me speculating wildly with no information. Now you can see at the bottom of the screen there are thumbnails of pages. These are accurate thumbnails of pages, and you can navigate using them. They're also numbered. At the end is a button you can push to just enter a page number to jump there directly. Plus, there's a menu here and a menu here, which allow you to get to the table of contents for the bookmarks. And they just pop up and are, sorry about the lighting, are quite easy to use. So if I wanted to go to careers and development, I would touch it, it opens up into the different sections of that chapter. I might pick magic, and bang, here we are at magic. Okay. So in many ways it's still a superior experience, yet it's lacking certain very, very convenient features like the hyperlinking that Adobe does. And if you're using a file that responds a little better to PDF readers, then Adobe comes out on top, which I guess I originally expected in my initial review and was surprised that it didn't. The last time I reviewed readers, the Kindle app was the fastest and most stable. Of course, lacking in features. Well, that lacking in features aspect hasn't really changed, and I don't actually use it for PDF reading anymore. However, one nice development is that you can now upload your content. You can upload your own PDF collection into your account and have it accessible through Kindle. So let's just pull up a PDF file. Doesn't really matter what. So, okay, let's pull up All for One. And I'll choose to open it with the Kindle app. And there it is. It still loads quite quickly, but it isn't as quick as the other two that we just looked at. And that's an important issue for me. Okay. So, there you have it. Up-to-date 2013 performance of PDF readers. I would actually recommend having both Easy PDF Reader and Adobe. You're going to pay for the full features of Easy PDF Reader, but not very much, and Adobe's free. And Adobe has been working very hard at keeping it at the forefront of PDF technology instead of hanging way at the back like when they first released it. So there you go. Enjoy. One of the great things that Design Mechanism has done is put an Android app out called Combat Effects for all of us RuneQuest players. And basically what the app does is do the math for you for the differential roll. We compare the roll of the attacker and the defender, and you determine if either of them fumbled, failed, got a success, or got a critical. And the difference between them determines how many special effects you might earn. Around the world, a lot of people are talking about North Korea and their threats of drowning us in a sea of fire and missile drills and nuclear bombs and that sort of thing. Foreigners being warned to go home. And well, I'm sitting on a bench outside my house surrounded by flowers and cherry blossoms and magnolia leaves and all this stuff, and the level of panic around me is zero. It's situation normal. And I work in an international environment. I work with students from basically all over the world, and while the level of fear or concern among newcomers to Korea is quite high, and among those who are getting all their news from English news sources such as the Crisis News Network, CNN, is also quite high. This is nothing that I haven't seen before in my 16 years here. Sure, there's a new leader up north, and sure, there's a new government here now. But the pattern remains the same, the rhetoric remains the same, and this time, the North no longer has a staunch ally in China. They're truly going it alone. And from a certain logical standpoint, the idea of making South Korea a target of a war, especially with those kinds of weapons, considering this is where the bulk of their food comes from, is frankly ludicrous. This is a cry for attention, this is blackmail, and this is not a cause of concern among local people or long-term residents. It's more a cause of embarrassment. that's really what it feels like here today. The anniversary of the birth of Kim Il-sung is coming up, the father of the previous leader, the grandfather of the current leader. Both deities for North Koreans. That'll be on the 15th. There'll be some sort of display between now and then, and, well, then it'll be back to blackmail as usual.